All right. Hello, everyone. We are connected. Thanks for joining us. We're here with Rachel Anderson today. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Devlin. How are you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, we are discussing mission-driven instructional design today. I met Rachel through Clubhouse, that like audio drop-in app, probably like a year and a half ago, like
Yeah.
a while back. We were on there like multiple times a week. And hearing Rachel's perspective on like the work she does and the projects that her and her team do, like this is like one of the top examples in my mind of what like good instructional design work looks like, and like seeing people who are like passionate about their craft. And yeah, I've talked about the examples you've shared like to many IDs. So I'm super excited to have you live with us here. And then after, as we were talking about the session, Rachel told me more about ALSAC, the organization she works for, and how they support St. Jude Children's Hospital, and it did have that really mission driven component. So not only is Rachel like supporting a really important mission, but Rachel is also doing really good instructional design work to support that mission. So there should be something here for everyone. Um, but but yeah, I'm hoping we can share some good perspective for people who are like, I really want to do some like mission driven work. I don't want to work for a corporation with a mission I can't get behind. So
Mhm.
Rachel is a great example of how to thrive in a role like that. So I have questions prepared for you, Rachel.
All right.
The community, everyone who's here, you are welcome to ask questions as well. Please use that Q&A tab and vote on the ones you'd like to see answered. And after we get through my questions, we'll get to all of yours. So thanks for being here, everyone. All right, Rachel, ready for the first question?
I am ready. Let's go.
Okay, so I guess to give us some context, can you tell us a bit more about your role and your organization's mission, like
Yeah,
what
of
you're doing?
course. So yeah, like you said, I work at ALSAC, and it is an acronym. We love acronyms at ALSAC, by the way. But ALSAC stands for American Lebanese Syrian Associated Charities. So it is the awareness and fundraising organization of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So we do all the behind the scenes work to push the St. Jude brand and to raise the funds to keep the hospital going. In fact, whenever I meet new people and tell them about what I do, I usually ask them, what St. Jude event are you familiar with? Now in Memphis, the number one event people always say is St. Jude Memphis Marathon. That's a big deal. Everyone comes into Memphis for that event. And I tell them, so that event is actually put on by ALSAC employees. Everything from the planning to the execution. It's a lot of volunteers, but it's led by the ALSAC employees. So we take care of all of that so the St. Jude employees can focus on the children. So that's how that setup is. ALSAC was actually founded in 1957. So we were created 3 years before the hospital by Danny Thomas, because Danny Thomas wanted to make sure that we had the funds to keep the hospital going, because we cover a lot of things. We cover treatment, we cover transportation, we cover housing, we cover meals, and that gets pretty expensive pretty quickly. So that's the whole mission that our organization has. As far as my role as an instructional designer, how I view it is that we have all these employees, right? These professionals in IT, brand marketing, amazing fundraisers, and my role is just to make sure that they are at their best, that they have the skills that they need to communicate better with each other, to lead and coach their teams, to lead these volunteer teams, to influence other people, and just be high performing so they can secure the funds for the kids at St. Jude. So that's how I see myself connecting to the mission. And it's really been a very meaningful experience for me.
Okay, nice. So your organization's mission is to support St. Jude's and like spread the word about it and raise awareness. And then your mission as like a singular instructional designer is kind of like multiply the efforts of like the entire organization with like the learning experiences you design. So yeah, that's a really cool position to be in as an instructional designer. So
Yes.
good stuff. So I guess let's go into that because you've been working there for like close to a decade now, right?
Yeah, it's 8 years now. I will be 9 years old in December. So yes,
Nice. All right, so
been here for a little
getting
bit.
there. Yeah. And so why did you decide to kind of go that route, the nonprofit route, as opposed to like a for-profit organization?
Yeah, ever since my undergraduate years, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I really wanted to do meaningful work. something about making a difference in the world, instead of just making a CEO richer somewhere. And me personally, my personal opinion is that you can't pick a better mission than St. Jude for these children to get the opportunity to grow up, and to live a full life, because of what All St. Jude does. So I actually started as an intern. Fun fact, I started as an intern during my master's program, and I was in my internship for about 5 months, before they offered me a full-time position. So it's been good. I'm just very grateful that I secured a role in doing exactly what I had hoped to do. So yeah, it's been great.
All right, great. So yeah, you knew coming into the the workforce that you wanted to support a mission you could get behind. I see there are some people in the chat who are excited to see a fellow nonprofit ID. Hello, Don.
Hey.
Oh, cool. Carrie has a cousin who works at Allsac. She knows y'all do
Oh,
great work.
yes, we do a lot of great works, and it's some amazing people. Like, they impress me every year of what they're able to accomplish for those kids. So yeah, shout out to your cousin for being part of the mission work.
Very cool. But okay, good. Yeah, so it seems like you made the right choice, seeing that you're still there 8.5 years later.
Yes.
So good stuff. And then I guess this question is, I mean, you kind of already answered it, but it's like, do you feel like you're making an impact with the work that you're doing? Getting the sense that it's yes, but
Yeah, absolutely. I get, and I feel like this doesn't happen across the board with other organizations, but even though my role is instructional designer, I do get an opportunity to facilitate sometimes. And that can be rewarding in itself, to not only design the training, but then to facilitate it. So you get to actually see it in action and how people are receiving it, and just getting that feedback, that in real time feedback during and afterwards. And if you've ever facilitated a class, one of the best feelings is the aha moment, like when you see that they got it and you're like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted you to see or feel or any of that. And so that's really great when you're able to facilitate that class and see that happening. So I would say some of the best moments were when I had feedback in that time that says, oh, this makes so much sense. And I really want to try this. And there's times where people will stop me after a class and tell me just how helpful that course was and how excited they are to apply it. Or even down the line, they will come back and be like, I remember that growth mindset course you did. It's changed my whole perspective of things. And I'm really grateful for it. So those kind of moments, I mean, they're like gold.
yeah.
Any kind of email that I've gotten, I've saved those emails, all of it, because it really is so motivating to see that people are really getting something out of your work. Because you can have data all day long that says that the course was effective. And, we all gather data like that. But there truly is nothing like hearing someone tell you thank you for what you did, because it helped improve how they approach their career. So, yeah, I
Nice.
do feel like I'm making an impact.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people have like teaching experience or are transitioning into the field like from teaching, and they are used to being in front of that classroom and maybe seeing those aha moments. So that's something a conversation I often have is like in these ID roles, maybe you aren't going to be in front of people facilitating. Some roles you do, and it sounds like you're in one of those roles where you get to do that. You get to directly see that impact and have that
Yes.
um yeah, connection with the actual audience that you're serving. So I can see how that
Absolutely.
would be really rewarding, especially when people are yeah, they're like, some IDs are they're very behind the scenes, and then like
Right.
someone else is facilitating. It's like it's not saying like designed by Devlin or whatever it is,
Right.
like on the e-learning. um,
Yeah,
so
but you know what? And even thinking about that, I have a coworker. She is our main facilitator, so we partner a lot. I would design training, she would go facilitate it, and she'll get all these kudos about how great and engaging the class is. And one things I really appreciate about her name is Jessie Dickert. One thing I always appreciate about her is that she always let people know, well, Rachel designed this whole training, all those activities and stuff. She always makes it a priority. And I just love my team. They're just so awesome. So
nice.
even if I'm not there, they will make sure people know who did a lot of the work behind the scenes. So
Oh,
yeah,
nice. Okay,
it's great to
that
have
is
a good
very
team.
nice. Cool. Okay. So yeah, even when you're doing some of that behind the scenes work, like it sounds like you are still getting some of that recognition for it. I guess, and then I see some people in the chat as well. They are in similar roles where they do that facilitation as well for a nonprofit.
Right.
Um, do you do much work like self-paced kind of like e-learning kind of work where it
Yeah, actually, I started out doing e-learning. That was my main focus when I first started at ALSAC, and then my role kind of expanded a bit. I did more instructor led, then live virtual led, and then programming. And so it just kind of expanded to where I don't do e-learning as much. It kind of got delegated to my coworker who does videos as well. So every blue moon now I get to touch e-learning. I kind of miss it because I love the Articulate
Yeah.
community and dabbling in those things. And so, but you know, it's how it is when you're in a role for a while, you start to expand and build out your expertise. But yes, I did start out doing e-learning and dabbling in that.
Okay. Nice. I guess I'm curious just because a lot of people are in roles where they are very heavily doing e-learning. Like when you are doing some of that self-paced stuff, do you feel like you're making an impact? And maybe the answer may be no, or maybe it's more further removed because you don't have the direct connection to the audience. But
Mhm.
what about when you're working on projects like that? Like how does it feel impact wise?
So I think with e-learning, you know, you're right. You're not facilitating, so you don't get to see if they had an aha moment or not. I think what helps in that is having surveys for those e-learning courses because you should be, you know, surveying your audience and seeing was this impactful, was this helpful for
Yeah.
them, and you know, leaving space for them to give that kind of feedback. I've gotten some really great reviews from e-learning before because they wrote it out into that survey. So that can also help mitigate for that to be like, okay, this was effective, this was good. And it also lets you know what tweaks you might need to make to your e-learning. So I always tell my partners who try to put e-learning to our LMS, hey, try to have a survey too, because you need to know if
Oh,
this
yeah.
really is helping, you know, the employees that you're trying to serve. So
Great
yeah,
point.
that's how
Yeah.
I get that.
Great point. Yeah, you can still collect that feedback and hear that perspective from the people you're serving with a survey. So
Yes.
good point. Good point. Um, so can you talk to us a bit about your ID process? I know you draw on like some action mapping in there.
Yes,
Yeah, can you talk
of
to us a bit
course.
about that?
You know what? I feel like almost all the time I'm talking about how much I'm a big fan of Kathy Moore. You know, I joke that if
Yeah.
Kathy Moore had a fan club, I would be on the leadership team. Now, I wouldn't be pushy. I wouldn't be like the president, but you know, maybe I'll be the secretary or the
Oh,
historian, something. Uh,
yeah.
but I love Kathy Moore, and I actually do a variation of her process. So pretty much her process is what I use, and I do a variation for it of what I've adjusted to like the dynamics of how ALSAC likes to work. But it's pretty similar to what she has outlined there. So I get to talk to people who's receiving the training. I get to, you know, do the whole action mapping process of just asking, you know, about the goal and then the behaviors and all of that kind of stuff. And her process has saved me a lot of time
Yeah.
at times where, you know, there was those basic answers that need to be addressed. And my subject matter experts were just so ready to get straight to the course that they didn't think about those answers. So it helped us to really make sure that it was impactful and targeted to what the audience needs and to solve the problem. So it's been great. I have been enjoying using the process. It's been really helpful for me. It's been a learning experience too. You know, it's a different way of doing things of what I normally did. If you read the book, you know, Kathy's voice is like this a little bit of sarcasm and but great humor in it to kind of explain her process. And I would read the book like, wait, no, and she'll respond like, yes, you should. XYZ. And I felt like she was talking directly to me.
Yeah.
But I joke of how it's my ID Bible now. I use it
Yeah.
all the time and I've definitely shared it with my team. So yeah, I use that process through and through.
Yeah, I felt the same way when I was reading Map It for the first time. For people who aren't familiar, yeah, we're talking about Map It by Kathy Moore. She has this process, action mapping. It's about like designing this streamlined approach to designing training that produces results. It's more
Mhm.
about designing like practice activities and scenarios than it is about like info dumps. So you're probably familiar with it, but if not, there's a ton of content on on the YouTube channel about it. And Map It is just like the book to read.
It
So, yeah,
is.
we, like that's what we, like I feel like instantly connected over, like, on Clubhouse, like, the first time I heard you talking, you were talking about, action mapping, and I was like, "Yes, fellow
Also,
action mapping
perfect.
fan."
You too. Yes, we
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, so
I tell people all the time it's worth the money for that book because I've had an
yep,
ID to say, really, should I pay? Yes, trust me on it.
yes.
Worth it. It is
Yep,
worth
that's the number 1 book recommendation I give as well.
it.
But it was so cool hearing you talk about it because you're, like, actually implementing it, like, in this, like, full-time capacity, like, for your organization, so I'm like, That's powerful. Yeah, you've like built up the trust to be able to implement more and more of it. You've modified it to work more like for your team and for your organization. So
Mhm.
so it's cool that yeah, there must be something very, very rewarding about being in a role where you support the mission and you're able to use like an actual effective instructional design process to help support that mission. So
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
for people who are looking to make a difference in the ID space, like it is definitely possible. And Rachel is like a living example of that.
Yes.
So thank you for yeah, thank you again for being here.
Of course, of course.
And I see some good questions coming in the chat. If you can just send it to the Q&A tab. I just have like a couple more and then it's just going to be an open discussion. So good questions, everyone.
Okay.
Um, so still on the action mapping topic, and maybe I kind of gave this away, but when you joined or when you started, you kind of had to figure it out, right? Like your team wasn't already using action mapping.
Oh, yeah. So I joined the LOD team at ALSAC in 2013. So, the book didn't come out till
Oh
2017.
yeah.
And I didn't even hear about it until late 2018. Now, I'm a book nerd through and through. So I have always been itching to read a new book, purchase new books. I have plenty of books. I have a long to read list.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, I plan on doing some more share outs of just what I'm reading and insight. So if you are a book nerd like me, you can follow me on Twitter at Rachel Sharia or on LinkedIn. I plan to post more about what I'm reading. I'm sorry about that shameless plug. Definitely just
No,
to
no worries.
get back
Yeah.
focused. But yeah, no one on my team was familiar with the process. And so they weren't surprised that Rachel's found another book. Where are you reading this time, Rachel? Okay, well, let me tell you all about it. And so I'll tell them about the book. And this really grabbed their attention because it really helps with asking the right questions and helping your subject matter experts stay focused on solving the problem instead of just having a class. And it just gives that way of navigating that conversation. And I love that. And so I read through the book so quickly, and I was very shaky and nervous when I first tried to start doing it because it was kind of a new way of approaching it in our team. And so when I first did it, I was nervous, but when I saw the impact of structuring it in that way, approaching it that way, I was hooked. I was
Yeah.
sold. I was like, okay, every project, I'm taking this approach. So now, a lot of the members on my team have read the book, and everyone on my team is completely, in agreement that that's a good process to go. They will tell the partners that we have that's looking for a class. Well, Rachel can do an action mapping session. Rachel, can't you? You can do an action map. It's like, yes, of course I can. So I'm appreciative that my team is sold on it, and so we are using that process when we do our ID work. So it's been great. My team has really embraced action mapping.
That is great. So not just the power of one ID using this process, but the whole team. So good
Yes.
stuff. Yeah, and I mean, that's awesome that you've been using this on I'm imagining quite a handful of projects leading these sessions. I imagine you just get better and better every time new stuff comes up. So that's
Absolutely.
great experience that you're getting. That's cool. And it's good you have the team that supports you and like it's on board with it. You talked when we
Yes.
were talking beforehand too, it seems like your team is you're on a really good team. I mean, like you've mentioned. So good
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. I say it all the time. The mission is great, but my team, they are definitely one of the biggest reasons why I stay at Allstate. It's just a really great team. We gel very well. We have a good psychological safety within the group, and we can innovate and talk ideas and give feedback. So it's a great team. I really appreciate them.
Nice. I had more another question about implementing action mapping and like trying to like, and if you got any pushback for that, just because I know some other people they may try implementing this at their orgs and like it is kind of like an uphill battle. The team may not be as quick to like jump on board with it. Sounds
Mhm.
like maybe you didn't face a ton of pushback, but if you did, do you have anything to say about that or
Well,
any?
yeah, I really think pushback should be expected,
Yeah,
because it's a new process. And you know how humans are, whenever there's a change, there's going to be some people who's going to jump on board. And there's going to be some people that are like, I don't know if I want to jump
yeah,
on board just yet. There's people who are naturally skeptical and they're going to ask a lot of questions before they decide to be bought in. So I kind of think of it as, don't look at it as pushback as a negative thing, but more so that people are trying to wrap their head around this way of doing this new process. And you, as the ID, get the opportunity to teach them this new perspective and how it's impactful and how it's helpful. So my advice that I usually give to people about it is to don't let the questions frustrate you. Okay. And also don't let it intimidate you either. When I first started using her process with subject matter experts who were kind of like, wait, what? And trying to understand the process, I was really nervous because I was scared that I wouldn't know all the answers to the questions. But guess what? I didn't. There were some questions that I got that I really didn't know quite how to answer. So I just tried my best. But what I did was write down those questions, go back afterwards. Okay, what is a better way I could have answered those questions for next time? I take notes on that. And then before I do the next session, I read over my notes and I try again. I put myself back in the position to practice those skills. And, I was even more prepared for the next time. So I think it's important to remember to be patient with yourself, give yourself grace. You're learning. This is part of the
Yeah.
learning process. I tell people, I challenge people to say, are you really learning if there's never a moment where you're uncomfortable? Part of the learning process, you're going to be uncomfortable sometimes because you're learning something new and you're practicing it. And we have to remember that for ourselves as much as we do for our participants, right? We tell our participants, hey, after this class, go practice the skill, get feedback, and then practice again and get more feedback. Well, just it's nothing different when it comes to, the action mapping process. You practice it, you get feedback on how it went for you and your subject matter expert, and then you refine how you approach it the next time. So I tell people just give yourself grace. Don't be intimidated from the questions. Adjust your perspective that the pushback is just that people are trying to understand the process of how it's effective. And this is your opportunity to teach them a different way of doing things. So by having that perspective, it made it easier for me to approach those conversations. In showing that I'm trying to make sure you get a good understanding of how this really can be effective to solve the problem that's in front of you. And so my team, they definitely got it. I mean, they live in this space, and so they definitely want to be more of the problem solvers than just the order takers. So that's how they got involved with it. But my subject matter experts, I still explain to them, and they relatively get on board. Do I still get questions? Of course, but it's just helping them to really see it from a different perspective.
Very nice. Yeah, that's a great perspective. So the pushback isn't a problem. It's yeah, just expect the pushback. That's part of the process, and that's part of the process that's going to make you better at having these conversations as well. So
Right.
great point. Um, yeah, it's to be expected when there's a new process. I like that. Cool. And yeah, subject matter experts generally, once they are on board, they seem to quite like this process and like the final result because it is more, story driven and scenario based. So I found SMEs tend to have really positive feedback about the action mapping approach once they get on board.
Yeah, once they get on board, they're good.
Yeah. So this is something a lot of people like about the ID field too, like the creative aspect, like creativity. So yeah, do you have the opportunity to be creative in the work that you do?
Yeah, it's actually encouraged. Our line of leadership for LOD, they are open to this concept of testing and learning. So there's been plenty of times that myself, other people on our team will come up with these new innovative ideas, and our leadership will pause, but be like, okay, well, why don't you build like a test for it and have a pilot group to experience, and let's see how they feel about it and how it's impactful to them. And so I appreciate that they have that kind of perspective of testing and learning because that doesn't happen too often in many teams. So I'm definitely appreciative. And so out of that, we've done plenty of things. Just to name a few things, one project that I pushed for was this series called Let's Chat. And so these are short sessions that are facilitated by the people on our Learning Partner Network. Now, the Learning Partner Network is a group of employees that volunteer to be a part of this to help us kind of push for a culture of learning at LSAC. So they do a lot of different things. They help market new learning opportunities by sharing it to their teams because, you may not read it enterprise-wide email, but you'll read an email from that coworker that you really like. So, we use that to our advantage of having them to help market things out. and, to sit in on pilot classes, sit in on focus groups. They just really help us have a stronger learning culture. So they will volunteer to facilitate these sessions. And the sessions are pretty short. They're 45-minute book club style sessions where you read an article or watch a learning video before the session. And you just come to the session to meet with other OutSec employees and discuss it informally. And everyone gets a chance to share their experiences or best practices with each other. And it's just a really good conversation. Originally, we did it for 30 minutes long, and then I got feedback in the surveys of it's too short. We was on such a roll. We didn't get to talk about all the things we want to talk about. So we expanded it to 45 minutes, and we see that's kind of like the sweet spot right now. So it's a 45-minute session. And it was helpful for many reasons. It expanded our resources as an LOD team because we didn't have to facilitate it. We had the learning partners to facilitate it for us. It also gave the partners a chance to practice their facilitation skills. That was the number one thing of why many of them volunteered to do it, because they wanted to get better at their facilitation skills. And so this was an opportunity to do that. And then it also gave another learning opportunity for our employees to learn from each other, that, social learning type of environment type of thing. Because, we always say that the facilitator shouldn't be the all-knowing, being that you learn directly from. It should be everyone. There's so many years of experience in the room. Why not share it? So it really created that kind of opportunity. So we tested that out in, oh gosh, I'm gonna get all my years messed up. We tested that out in 2020, yeah, or 2021. I'm getting all my years messed up. But then the next year we did a full year of it, and now we're going to do it again in our new fiscal year. I got to think in fiscal years versus calendar years. So y'all excuse me on
Right.
that. But yeah, we did that. Another one we tested out was Let's Practice. So it was the same type of dynamic here, only we gave them tips and resources to read first about a particular topic. And then they come to the session and read a scenario in which they discuss during the session how would they approach it, what would they say, and just have a discussion around that to practice that, so they could practice their skills from what they've learned. So that was a great way to reinforce training that we've already done, or reinforce some of the job aids and materials that we made from a course, and tell them, okay, use that now to practice here. So that was something else that we tested out that's been doing pretty well. So the last one I'll mention is Learning Challenge. That was a pretty big deal when we did Learning Challenge. This was in 2020. And the whole purpose was to encourage people to use learning resources available. It's a pandemic, everyone's at home, but we have a lot of self-paced and live virtual led training. And so we wanted people to dive into the LMS, find some things that's interesting to you. So we create this whole gamification type thing where you can earn points for the time you spent learning. And then we would give out prizes to the top earners. And we marketed it by having this animated video series where we had superhero characters who explore different topics to combat disruption, And each topic that we had a list of all the different types of learning resources that was available in our LMS for them to explore. So every week we'll kick it off with a video. And then our employees would watch the video. They'll go see what resource there and sign up for it and try to be that top earner by the end of the week. And it was amazing. I'm a big fan of my coworker. I won't say his name because he does not like public attention, but he is a master at everything video design. So he designed those videos. He designed the characters in PowerPoint, which amazed me because they looked so good. And he did the video design in Camtasia. And it was such a passion project to him, where there were times he couldn't find music that was a right fit. So he would grab his guitar and then just make the music, record it, and put it in the video. So he's like the Renaissance man of this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. We saw a huge jump in how people were using our learning resources. So we've had a lot of fun innovating new ways to engage our employees and, help them to learn and professionally develop. So yeah, those are just a few of the things we've tried out.
Very cool. Yeah, that's why I had to ask this question, because on Clubhouse, I remember you talking about the learning challenges one and how you've points are associated with all these different activities. And I'm like, you're doing some innovative stuff over there. Like, you're not just churning out these info dumps.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's
We
Yeah,
have some creative people on our team, and that idea was all my coworkers' brainchild. So
yeah.
we just all jumped on board, and we were super excited to be a part of making it come to life. So yeah, it's been great. It's so much fun.
Very nice. And something you mentioned like in the beginning of this response, which I think is like really innovative, like in and of itself, is having this like learning partner network. So you
Yes.
have like employees at the company who are like advocates for like the learning function, it sounds like, and you can kind of lean on them when you need support, spreading initiatives, getting feedback, um, and even facilitating some sessions. So that, yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, facilitating that like peer to peer, like
Mhm.
social learning. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah,
That's cool.
they've been so helpful because originally it wasn't the Learning Partner Network. We were implementing our new HR system, Workday, and we needed people to help us, educate the organization on how to use it. And so we decided, why don't we keep this? These people are really supportive of this and want to be a part. And that's when Learning Partner Network was born. And so we've been doing it for about three or four 3 or 4 years now. So yeah, it's been great. And it's so encouraging because they're like your biggest cheerleaders. They're like, yeah, this sounds awesome. I'm definitely going to tell everybody. It's like, yeah, you do that. So, they've been a great group of people to work with as an extension of LOD.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, great. Good ideas. I'm sure some people here are taking notes for things they may be able to try on their own teams. So good
Yeah.
stuff there. The last question I have for you that some people here may be curious about is what's next for you? Yeah, 8.5 years now with this org. I know you're thinking about. I mean, well, you shared some news with me before the session, but what do you want to share with all of us here?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm a lifelong learner when it comes to instructional design. There's always something new you can learn. There's always something new you can revise, try a new approach, and with technology changing, there's even more stuff to learn. So I'm always learning. So my next step here, I really want to learn more about video design and get my hands wet with how to effectively use Camtasia to make these videos. And I feel like I'm learning from the best with my coworker
Yeah.
who made those videos for the learning challenge. So I told him if I could just get a third of your skill, I would be super excited. So he's been mentoring me, and it's been great just trying to work on that skill and refining it. So I'm doing that. I'm also preparing to take the CPTD in December. So that is, the certification through ATD for talent professionals. So I'm really nervous, really excited about it. So fingers crossed that I pass it the first time around. But that will be this December. And actually, the ultimate goal for me is to really do freelance. I would love to get to pick my projects and really just have that kind of control over my own business to do instructional design. So I really want to go into freelance work. And so I'm hoping that I'm not sure exactly when I will officially jump out there full time to do freelance, but I will. It will happen. So I'm really excited about doing that. And I'm learning as much as I can from some amazing people like yourself, your YouTube channel, and all these other people that I've networked with. Shout out to Kim Scott because I just talked to her last night to
Yeah.
get some insights on, getting my feet wet a little bit and just learning how to do that. So yeah, that's what's next for me because I feel like, if I'm not going to do mission focused work and I'm going to be making someone richer, it might as well be myself. So that's what I look at of what I would like to do next. But so far at ALSAC, I'm learning. I'm having the grace to learn, the grace to make mistakes and learn from it, and that's something to value. So for now, I'm working on this video design skill, and I can't wait to get even better with it. So yeah, that's kind of been the next steps for me.
Good stuff. Okay, so you know what you're doing with your professional development, and yeah, it sounds like with all this experience you've been getting and are continuing to get, yeah, it sounds like you're gonna have plenty of opportunities in the freelance space, and
I
I'm
hope
sure you'll
so.
get to do work that is still just as meaningful and important to you. So
Yes.
great stuff. All right, so now we are going to turn it over to all of you. We'll see what questions you've already answered, and yeah, we can take the conversation wherever you all would like it. I have a couple of questions. It looks like from Carrie Ann.
Okay.
And yeah, feel free to speak to these if you can, and if not, you can just pass. But Carrie Ann's curious about how the income differs in nonprofit ID roles compared to for-profit corporate roles. And I know you've kind of had this one role, but do you have a sense for what that's
Honestly, I have a limited view just because I've only been at OWSAC, so I haven't worked at other nonprofits. What I can say is that it varies. It just varies depending on which nonprofit you work for. So it's hard for me to just say that, like a general statement that they all are, they all aren't. Um,
Yep.
I know at least for OWSAC, we try our best to be very competitive. And because you got to have top talent if you're trying to do the kind of work that we're doing for these kids and across the street at St. Jude. So because our building is on the same campus with St. Jude, so that's why I say across the street. But yeah, so it really just varies. It really just depends. But I can say our compensation team try their absolute hardest to make sure it's competitive. To have a salary to draw in new employees at OWSAC. So it just really depends. I'm sorry that I can't give a better answer than that, but it just really depends on which nonprofit you go to.
Yeah, that's okay, but you don't I mean, I think you've spoken about this a little bit, but, like, you're comfortable and you don't feel like you're, like, giving up a ton basically to
Oh, no,
be
yeah, I am comfortable. I'm content. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first told my parents I want to work for a nonprofit, they just gave me a blank look. And my mom was like, "So this means you're going to be living with us for a while, aren't you?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, hold on." I didn't say that. That's not what's going to happen. But no, I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable. So, I don't think it should be the first thought is like, "Oh, you're going to be broke."
Yep.
No, the nonprofits, they understand what they're up against with, for profit and things like that. So they do try their best. I will at least say I believe that most nonprofits are trying to be competitive as much as they can. Yeah, they're not going to be a tech company of how it is there, but they're going to be as competitive as they can. And I would actually recommend too. Now think about this. Look at their benefits because their benefits could be a huge help in that with your salary too. You have to factor that in when you're looking at new jobs of what kind of benefits do you have along with your salary. So definitely always explore that as well. So Alsac does a great job of that. We have some amazing benefits, and we always have our new hires who are just floored at how great our benefits are. So definitely check that out as well, along with your salary when you're looking for a nonprofit job.
Well, good stuff. Yeah, I think that helps give some perspective here. Another most upvoted question is also from Carrie Ann, and it's about the pace and variety of projects in the nonprofit sector. And again, I guess you can only speak to Allsac, but it sounds like there's quite the variety. I mean, you may have answered this a little bit with those examples you gave, but it sounds like you have a lot of projects in the works, and you've been doing self-paced, virtual, instructor-led,
Mhm.
actual face-to-face. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to say on that piece, but
Yeah, there's a lot of variety. With my role, I, of course, put stuff out. Our HR team is called Employee Experience. So projects from Employee Experience. Then I have my partners within the organization who will come to me to help design the training they need to do for either the employees or for volunteers or what have it. And so I will help them with that. And then our team just trying to be proactive in what we put out from what we're seeing from employee surveys and what we're seeing, going on within the organization with different changes that are happening. We try to be proactive to see what can we put out to really help our employees be prepared for the changes that the organization is going through. So it's a lot of variety. I definitely don't get bored. There's always something new. There's always something challenging. So I feel like variety is always there, and the pace just varies. It really just varies depending on the project. Some projects is we're pulled in very early, so we get plenty of time to go to a good place. And then sometimes some things is like last minute. We call it fireball, so it's a combination of like fire and then so a fireball project is what we refer to it as. So some of those we got to kind of drop everything and focus on it. So it really just varies, but I get a lot of variety in what I do at Alsec, so it's been great.
nice. Yeah, I think the varied pace is probably a lot of people can relate to, and not just nonprofit roles, but like for-profit roles as well. I think
Yeah,
that's pretty typical. Sometimes you got to do the sprints, but
yeah,
we have this
yeah.
question from Anne about if there's anything an ID from the for-profit sector needs to learn when they enter not-for-profit work. Maybe you've seen that in team members who have joined or anything.
Um, I would say, you know, if I was to answer this, I mean, and I think it's kind of general, honestly, depending on wherever, every organization has a different culture. Every organization, and that's no different even if it's from a for-profit to another for-profit or for-profit to nonprofit. Every organization has a different culture. So it's really about, doing your best when you first get in, of learning the culture, those nuances and stuff, finding people who's been there for a while that you can learn from, to kind of understand what's the unspoken rules, the unsaid things, things that, is not really said out loud, but it's just part of our culture. Like, for example, at OUSAC, we don't refer to people as, Mrs. Greer or, Mr. Anderson or whatever. We are first name basis all the way up to the CEO. With Rick, it's just call him Rick. He will correct you and say, Mr. Shadyac is my father. My name is Rick. So it's a very first name basis here at OUSAC. We have a very casual attire culture. Of course, don't come there with your pajamas on, but we have very casual dress. And of course, it's expected, when you're meeting with donors and things like that, to wear, your business casual things and such. Switch it up in those kind of situations. But those are things that's not really said necessarily, but it's just part of the culture. Well, the dress code, that's actually said in the handbook. But as far as how we address people, that's not really something that's really said. So just, understand the culture. And at least with nonprofits, just remember too that most nonprofits are very, very conscious about donor dollars. We're being very, conservative about our donor dollars because we understand this is mission work. So we can't go out and probably get the most expensive thing out there to accomplish something. We have to be very, very mindful of how we're spending donor dollars. So that's something to keep in mind if you come from for-profit to nonprofit. That's going to be a difference, because we definitely want to make sure we're mindful of that. So, to have that responsibility, we want the community to still trust us that we're using donor dollars effectively. So I would say that.
Great point. Yeah, I could see how that would be something people probably. Yeah, that would be a big difference, I think, coming from for-profit to nonprofit.
Yeah.
Great. The next question is from Elizabeth, and you've given us some examples already, but Elizabeth is curious about what are examples of trainings you've recently made?
Oh, that I've recently made. Let me think, because it feels like a whirlwind.
Yeah.
Lately, we've had an extremely busy fiscal year this year, so it's been a whirlwind. Like right now, I know I'm working on a hiring manager course, and we're also working on some financial training courses to make sure that everyone's on the same page of what we're expecting when it comes to how we're handling finances at the organization. But as far as courses that have wrapped up, there's been a number of things. We did like a coaching course, so making sure that our managers are coaching our employees effectively. Some other things that we've had was performance, making sure that our managers know what to expect when it comes to performance reviews and best practices and avoiding biases and all that kind of stuff, as well as our individual contributors to know what they should be doing when they're preparing for performance review time. So those are some of the things that I've been working on now and that have been in the recent past that I've accomplished. So it's a variety of stuff, a lot of different things. So it's been quite a whirlwind. Also, one big project is working on a HIPO program. So trying to get that together, and we're looking at different ways with our leadership development too, which I'm really excited about, of some of the revisions we're doing and preparing for that. So yeah, those are some projects I've been working on.
Nice. So it sounds like, yeah, quite the variety
Yeah,
of audiences that you're serving too. So yeah, I could see how that
absolutely.
would kind of keep you on your toes.
Oh, yes.
You wouldn't get
I am
bored.
on my toes right now, tippy top.
Nice. Okay. Okay, we're getting into these questions with a couple of upvotes. We may need some elaboration, but we'll see where if you have a response for this. But Ken is wondering if you can talk about experiential learning compared to e-learning in the L&D world in companies. So Ken, by experiential learning, I'm guessing you're referring to yeah, just kind of putting people in a situation and seeing if they can like figure it out, kind of learn as they go.
Okay, yeah, because I'm kind of curious what do you mean when connecting to e-learning, but I do know we have a lot of different programs when it comes to experiential learning. We have opportunities for people to shadow. We have opportunities for people to do target assignments where they will go to another team for a significant amount of time and learn about that team and do different tasks within that team to expand their own career growth there. So we have some experiential learning opportunities for people there if they're looking to do something different, within the organization. And that happens quite a bit. People want
Mhm.
to, are curious about another group. Like, hey, that seems interesting. Why don't I take this target assignment to go over there and learn how to do things there or shadow this person, learn a little bit more about their role. So those are some experiential opportunities that we give to our employees.
Yeah, great examples. Lots of examples here today for people who aren't so there may be some newer instructional designers here. I think you're given a very big range of what different types of projects and programs IDs can help support.
If any
Um,
of these that I've mentioned, if any of you are interested in just learning more of the details of how we did it, I am fully open to sharing whatever I know. Just connect with me either on LinkedIn or Twitter, either one, and we can have conversation. I don't mind sharing with
Great.
other people. So yeah, of course.
Okay, we will make sure to share your LinkedIn URL in the chat before the end of the session. So that will be good. Um, this is a good question for beginners. So Elizabeth is asking, as beginners, do IDs get to choose the process that they will be using? If not, do you suggest asking employers during interviews if they use action mapping or what process you will be expected to use?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think that could be a great question to ask at the end when they say, "What questions do you have?" I think that is a good question to ask. I really
Yeah.
do, because I'll be curious if I'm going to a new, group. Like, how do you all put it on your projects? How do you do your design work? At ALSAC, I've been given a lot of leeway to do things, so I'm able to choose how I do my process. Now, of course, I will show my leadership. Hey, this is how doing my process to my manager, my senior director, and they'll look over like, okay, it looks good. There you go. So, but they would give me feedback if they said, you might want to consider that. They'll give feedback, of course, but I've gotten a lot of leeway to work in the way that best works for me. And even, some of the other instructional designers on my team, they also get that same type of treatment if they're able to have their own way of how they like to approach their work of what's most effective. Like my coworker that does video design, he has a process that's a little bit different from mine, but it's been very effective for him. So, hey, whatever works at the end of the day, that's all that kind of matters when it comes to our team. If it works, it's impactful. If it solves a problem, thumbs up. So yeah, we've been given that kind of grace.
Great. Yeah, so it might not be like that everywhere, Elizabeth, but I think yeah, those are some great probing questions you can ask when you are trying to, when you are interviewing, and maybe if you are brand new, maybe you want to work with a team or a company that already has a process in place, or maybe you do want to try to experiment a bit more with some of these different processes and find out what works. So good question.
Yeah, and that's a good point. There are some organizations where they do have a set process and you have to
Yep.
fall in line with it. I know some IDs who have told me about that. So yeah, it does depend. So that's a good question to ask in an interview. That's yeah, very good question.
Yeah. The next question is from Alan. He's curious about the focus on accessibility. Like, how is that built into your team's training
Ooh,
solutions, if it
yeah.
is in a
I feel like there's some opportunities for us to really, dig deeper into that. We're looking into that of just how we will support in that type of way. But I mean, I'm being honest, we haven't made as big of a stride as I would like for us to go to, but it's something we're looking at, something that we're very aware of. And I think that's great how nowadays there's more attention to that because that's important. You want to be inclusive. You want to make sure that all of our employees feel like they're a part and they're being supported in their development. So I think there's some ways that we can improve even as our team. So we have some ways to go, but yeah, I think that it's important for all teams to have that though. It is good to be inclusive.
nice. And we're actually doing a session on July 7th with Holly Miller, who's like a accessibility like expert. And that's like accessibility 101, like useful inclusive design. So
I
So
will
yeah,
be in that session. I'm gonna see
we're
what
gonna
I
get
can
into
learn
that.
from
Yeah,
her.
that will be a good accessibility session. But yeah, I think there are opportunities for the whole industry to kind of make strides on the accessibility front, and I think teams are working on it. But yeah, I think there's always room for improvement. So
Yes, it is.
good stuff. Um, James is curious about the differences or similarities between action mapping and backward design. I don't know if you're familiar with backwards design.
So tell me a little bit in detail of what I'm not sure what his definition of backward design, but I would like to hear more so I can try to make some connections there.
Yeah, James, let us know in the chat if you're familiar with action mapping at all, or if there's a specific differentiation you're trying to make between the two. Let us know. Um, Kanisha is asking, when working on a course, where do you get your source info? Do you have to find SMEs outside of the organization?
um, No, because most of the training that I do, at least, is for inside the organization. So my audience is always the outside employees. So what we need for them. Now, my subject matter experts, they're usually tapped onto to help us with identifying the content that they feel is most effective, and then we are the ones that's helping them with. The whole structure and design and what's needed to really influence the employees. However, when it's the situation where we are looking at new ways of engaging our employees and stuff, we might look and see what vendors, what other resources outside the organization that might be good. And if it does overlap a little bit in some areas, like let's say it's project management, and we have teams that dabble into project management, agile, all that kind of stuff, we might connect with them like, hey, does this align with what you all are doing? Because we don't want to counteract some of the things that are already going on in the organization. So we'll partner in that kind of sense to make sure that it is effective, that we're being consistent and collaborative in that kind of sense. But for the most part, we lean in on our subject matter experts as far as what content they feel is most effective for our employees. And we'll give them feedback about that content as well. If we need to help them look for some things, we will help them. But yeah, it's always a collaborative thing. We don't want to just independently say we know everything and we're just going to go get it. If there are experts within the organization, we're going to talk to them and make sure we're on the same page.
All right, great. Yeah, I think that's fairly typical. You'll have access to the SMEs like within the organization. They'll have some sort of content available, and then you're kind of working with them to turn it into an effective learning experience and redirect the discussion to the goals and the outcomes and all of that.
Absolutely.
So good stuff. Don, I think Rachel just answered that question. Don was curious about if you ever do training for the hospital staff or if your domain is just the ALSAC employees. And I think you said it's always the ALSAC
Yeah,
employees.
it's always ALSAC. So I do explain this quite a bit of just ALSAC is a separate nonprofit organization from St. Jude. So we were founded 3 years before them, but we are on the same campus, but we have separate teams. We have separate HR teams, separate, executive staff, but we have the same board of directors with St. Jude. So our whole mission is to serve St. Jude. So I don't actually create training for like the docs. Of course, I'm sorry, y'all, about the background because this, of course, is assigned to do that. But they do have like a learning team over there that focuses on the development of the doctors and nurses and things like that. So yeah.
Nice. Good question. And then James, this is the last question. James says his understanding of backward design is beginning with the learning outcomes in mind and designing learning experiences and assessments from there. So
Yeah, I mean, with action mapping, it is thinking about the goal. What is the goal? What is the problem that you're trying to solve for? I think with action mapping, and this is just me based off just that response by itself of what I'm thinking you're talking about, but at least with action mapping, it really digs into the detail of what kind of questions to ask. I feel like when I took notes, I had a long list of all types of questions that I could ask to help clarify what I needed from my subject matter experts, and really exploring things about the different variables that can cause people to not want to do what you're wanting them to do. Like, what might make your employee who knows what to do say like, I'm not going to do that because of X, Y, Z. So really covering all of those bases. So I know if action mapping goes into that level of detail, I don't know if the process that you're referring to, if it has that level of detail of how to approach it. So yeah, that's what I'm sensing might be a difference there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think action mapping focuses very heavily on, like, the business goals, so not necessarily, like, the learning outcomes, but, like, what metric are we going to move for the business, and, like, that's kinda where it starts,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, and when you're, like, asking scenario-based questions, instead of giving feedback like, "Oh, nice try," like, "This is wrong for this
Yes.
reason," it's like you're showing the consequences of people making that mistake. So, I
Yes.
think there might be quite different, I'm sure you'll find some similarities, but yeah, action mapping is, definitely a process of its own to learn about if you're not familiar with it yet. I'm
Yeah,
going
I'm
to
glad you called that out. The scenario part is a big that was one of the things that I had to work on because she even gave examples of scenarios that weren't effective, and I was like, "Oh, I thought I was doing good scenarios until I read the book."
Yeah.
So it helped me kind of clarify, "Oh, okay, I see what kind of scenarios to really gauge their decision making in it," and that has helped tremendously of when I create training to have scenarios. So yes, I fully agree with that too.
Great. Well, thank you, Rachel. I just shared the link to connect with you on LinkedIn in the chat. Had a great hour with you here. Let's use those applause reactions. I think we press one on your keyboards and we can make them all appear on the screen.
Thank you so much. This
Cool.
has been fun. I hope that, this has been fun for you guys too, and thank you so much, Devlin, for having me. This has been great.
Yes, very fun, very insightful, and we're looking forward to seeing what you do next. We'll follow along on LinkedIn, and we will
Yes.
see you soon. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you,
Alright.
everyone. Bye
Bye,
bye for
guys.
now. We'll see you
Have
next
a good
time.
one.